Hi, everybody, and welcome to the final NaNoWriMo live stream. So, Tempest Fugit, time flies, I guess. We have survived yet another year of NaNoWriMo and emerged unscathed, hopefully. Psychologically damaged slightly, perhaps, but then again, we are writers. It's kind of our resting face. So I am joined today by Mackenzie Finkley, our product development specialist, Emily Vanderbend, our social media manager, and of course, Riley Bohr, literary specialist and publishing instructor. Whew, ladies, I didn't do Nano this year, but you guys did. So let's do stats. Emily, what is your word count?
Not as much as I would like, but I ended with more words than I started, so that's good. I'm around 22K.
Okay, not bad. Riley?
Also in the same boat, not as much as I would like, but I ended about 20K.
Good. Mackenzie?
Again, not as many words as I would have liked, but here we are. We are currently sitting pretty at about 31,000.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Congratulations. That's awesome. No, listen, I love to hear it. I'm so proud of y'all. I mean, look at us leading by example. So wholesome. Well, we do have a lot to discuss. I'm going to be interviewing these three beautiful humans about their expertise in publishing because today's topic, how to submit your book for possible publication. But before we do all of that, a couple of quick announcements. As we all know, NaNoWriMo is over. Today's the official last day. But the end of NaNoWriMo does not necessarily mean the end of our sponsorship. Manuscripts will still be ferociously supporting the organization, and our sponsorship lasts until the end of January. And for that reason, and because we have noticed that so many excellent writers this year are working on their manuscripts, but maybe fear that they won't be able to submit on time, well, we want you to know that we care deeply and we want to accommodate you to fulfill your dream of publishing. Therefore, we are officially extending the submission deadline from January 4th to January 31st, which will give you, dear authors, around one more month to work on your books. Now, Riley, our liaison between the NaNoWriMo forum and you guys, is monitoring the forum for your questions. Please do not hesitate to reach out to her. She knows her stuff. And in case you are ready for submission, the submission form can be found in the chat. Please consider submitting. We would love to read your book. And alternatively, if you think that the deadline extension is still not quite enough time for you to finish up, we have an option for you too. Manuscripts runs what we call a bridge program, and bridge program is, well, just that. It's a bridge between writing the book and publishing it. We will essentially equip you with all the tools, people, and support you need to finish writing your book and prepare the first draft for initial evaluation. You can choose between a 4-week program or an 8-week program. And here's the big kicker. To NaNoWriMo participants exclusively, we are offering a $200 discount. If you'd like to know more, we have a form for that too, which can also be found in the chat. We can't wait to hear from you. So please go ahead, sign up for everything and everything. We want to see it all. We want to read it all. And now that the infomercial is finally done, let's get down to business. So submitting a book, let's go step by step. First, Mackenzie, I have a question for you, ma'am.
For me?
Yes. So, as our product development specialist and a fiction author, and by product, I mean the writing and publishing services that we offer, please tell our authors why it might be a good idea to consider choosing a smaller and more specific imprint for their book rather than, I don't know, pitching to a big time publisher.
Great question. So, everyone is going to find a different path for every book. That is the short version of what I'm about to say. So ultimately what you have to decide is what's best for you and what's best for your book. Now, my thoughts about why going with a smaller publisher. You're going to get more hands-on attention, but you're also going to have more creative control. So that hands-on is not the same kinds of hands-on attention that you'd be getting at a traditional publisher, which would look like hands-on as in them getting their hands on your manuscript and making a lot of changes based on what they think is going to sell and market, all those things. And you possibly not having as much say as you would like, depending on the size of the imprint that you're working with, in your work or creative control. Not to mention, additionally, not having a huge royalty stake in your work as well. So we have to remember that 80% of authors never out-earn their advance. And the average advance is somewhere between, this is a big range, $10,000 and $60,000, which is pretty substantial. However, if your book does really, really, really well, but they only paid you $10,000 for it, but you are one of the 20% of authors that out-earns their advance, but you're getting this much off of each book, that would kind of sting, is one way to look at it. I'm going on a tangent here. That piece is important to me, as is having the creative control and all of the copyright, owning the copyright. So with big, large, traditional publishers, them wanting to own the copyright to your work is so that they can sell the rights to your story and make tons of money off of movies, merchandise, or whole ass theme parks. So you never know.
Essentially.
Yes. And you not seeing any of the profit and or not having any say in how that stuff is created. For example, the creator of Vampire Diaries had zero say in what happened to the TV show. Yeah.
Yes.
So literally zero say. Literally zero participation, which is, I wouldn't want that to happen to my book. So for me, I've decided to go with a small imprint, self-publishing, so that I have entire creative control. And the beauty of self-publishing is once you self-publish, if you decide that you do want to sell it to a major publisher later, you still can, because you own all of the copyright and you are free to change your mind at any time. That is the long answer.
No, listen, I appreciate you going into such depth with this one. And I especially appreciate you bringing up L.J. Smith, because I don't think that a lot of people know about what happened with L.J. Smith there. So essentially, what happened to her was that she was not allowed to participate in anything regarding the shooting of the Vampire Diaries TV show. And when they eventually hired her as a consultant, once she expressed creative differences about the direction of the show, there's no other way to say it, they fired her and never allowed her to contribute to anything else. Which is it's a shame, and it breaks my heart anytime that happens. And that's just one prominent example out of many. Now, Mackenzie, you specifically work with imprints, and I know that you have explained what an imprint is before. For the sake of clarity, because it's a submission deadline, let's just go over it one more time. Tell our authors what an imprint is, simplified.
Yes, simplified. An imprint is a brand. So a publishing house will have multiple imprints. So one larger company will have multiple brands in which they publish books under, and they can have as many as they see fit. They can have a brand for every genre if they like. I want you to think Penguin Random House and think Penguin Classics, Penguin Children's, Penguin, etc. ... That is an imprint.
That wonderful. I feel that I've learned a lot from this answer. And because here's the thing, right? It is, or it can be, a scary word. I've heard a lot of authors say, I don't really know what an imprint is and what it does, when in fact it either can be a sister or a daughter, sort of, how would you call it, program? Is that accurate?
Yeah, program, a department, even.
A department.
So for example, like Disney Publishing has an imprint that the name of the imprint is escaping me at the moment, but that is because even though Disney owns it, it is their imprint. Disney is nowhere to be found on any of the branding, because this particular imprint publishes adult themes. And Disney's overall brand is family friendly everything. Yeah. So this is their imprint and their brand that they use to publish maybe not so family friendly books.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great explanation. So even though an imprint, a huge company can own an imprint, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to be or want to be associated with it. So you
Mhm.
won't if it's not on brand. No, I appreciate it immensely. Thank you so much. You guys in the chat, if you have any additional questions for Mackenzie, drop them in the chat, and we will answer them as soon as the stream is done. Now, let's move on to our social media manager, Emily Vanderbent. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, that's great. First of all, congratulations again on completing your NaNoWriMo project. You've hit your goal, which is the most important thing. Now, as our social media manager, Emily, tell our authors why it could be more beneficial, in your opinion, to have the support of a marketing team behind the launch or even throughout writing the book.
Yeah, so it should be of no surprise that marketing for authors is super important because that's how your book gets in front of potential readers.
Yeah.
You could have the best book in the world, but it's not going to gain traction and it's not going to gain an audience if people don't know about it.
Yeah.
Most of the time when readers come and they choose a book, they aren't picking something out of random. They're not choosing something that they haven't heard about before. Normally they're picking something that is familiar to them in some way. So maybe they've seen it on Book Talk or Bookstagram. Maybe a friend recommended it to them, or maybe they've seen like an ad for it on Amazon or some other site.
So they're searching for specific keywords.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's the inundation of it, the continue and like repetitive of seeing it multiple times. That's where it sort of gets stuck in their head. So most readers need to see a book at least 7 times. There's been like studies and stuff done on this. You can look it up. But most readers need to see a book at least 7 times before they finally make that decision to go ahead and purchase it and go ahead and read it. So having a marketing team behind you really helps to get your book out there and get them in front of the right readers. It also keeps you from having to sort of do everything on your own and frees up some time for other things, like maybe writing another book if publishing and writing is something that you want to pursue continually. And it really also just frees up your time to help connect with readers in different ways, maybe through social media, maybe through events or newsletters. Social media, since that's sort of my thing, especially
sort of, only a little.
sort of my thing, is particularly like a form of marketing that I think authors should take advantage of and run themselves if they have sort of the time and the capacity to be able to do that. Now more than ever, sort of in social media trends and writing and sort of the book publishing world, readers don't just want to read your book, they want to be able to connect with you as an author. And so they want to see the author, they want to see sort of the behind the scenes, they want that curtain pulled back for them. And so it's more of an experience outside of just reading the book.
They want a piece of you, essentially.
Yeah. So that can get sort of tricky because you as the author want to sort of put yourself out there and be real and vulnerable and interact and connect with your audience and your readers. But there is also sort of like with everything, that sort of double-edged sword where you have to sort of take the time to step back and figure out how you're going to share things, what you're going to share, what you're going to keep private, as those sort of like walls between the creator and the audience are sort of breaking down now with social media and other forms.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something really interesting to me about people need to see the book 7 times at least for them to actually register it. Now, in terms of see the book, I mean, an interesting thing comes up for me, which is they will see your book cover. Where do you stand on book covers and marketing? Like, how does it correlate in your mind?
Oh, book covers are very, very important. We all say, like, you've heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, but we're all guilty of doing that. I've walked in a bookstore and taken a book off of shelf purely knowing nothing about it, absolutely nothing about it, purely from looking at the cover and seeing something interesting, and that catches my eye. So as far as like marketing and book covers go, you want to make sure that whatever is on your book cover, from the objects to the text to any taglines, to even any like praise quotes, if you have those on the front, or even on the back, you want to make sure that they all sort of tie into the genre expectations of your book, to make sure that when that person picks up your book because it's intriguing because of those different elements that relate to your genre. So if they pick it up thinking it's maybe a historical fiction, but you actually write historical fantasy and that's not really their thing, they're just going to set it back down. So you want to make sure that you're snagging the right attention.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And especially it's really hard to, like when you're teaching people, when you're teaching authors, when you're helping them to get through to them in this instance, because fair, because our whole lives we are taught, don't judge a book by its cover, but here literally you have to. And that is something that we can help you with as well. And another aspect that I wanted you to talk about a little bit here, Emily, is what you do for manuscripts is also your VPA, a video production assistant. We basically do these book trailers. If you could just walk us through it, what do you do for people?
Yeah, so as far as being a VPA goes, I'm sort of the liaison between the author and then the video team who is actually putting the trailer together. So I work with you, I walk you through sort of the templates that we have, and help you sort of figure out what a good structure for your video is, to be able to sort of communicate what your book is to people through that like 30 to 45-second video.
Right. Book trailers are really, is it a new idea? I mean, you are a marketing specialist, so tell me all about book trailers and marketing in the marketing world and the publishing world.
I mean, they've been around for a decent amount of years, but as far as like publishing goes, I think they're fairly new. If you're like not familiar with what like a book trailer is, if you think of like the term movie trailer, it's the exact same thing. Sort of like communicating the story and trying to sort of grab the audience with little teasers. So yeah, I think that as like the movie industry has been using that a lot more and relying on it, I think we've sort of seen that reflected in the publishing industry as sort of another way to just engage the audience through sort of a more visual means, because when we're reading itself, like our mind is what's painting the pictures, versus when we're watching like a book trailer, that's more of like an auditory and like a visual sense. So it's just sort of a different way to engage the audience and sort of tease them before the actual book comes out
and communicate the story. No, thank you so much, Emily. That was so insightful. Again, you guys in the chat, if you have any questions for Emily, she'll be happy to answer them. In the meantime, let's move on to Riley Bohr. How are you, ma'am?
I'm good.
Well, I actually work closely with you, Riley, on a daily basis. I know exactly what you do, and I admire you for doing it. So as someone, because you not only the role of a literary specialist for you is a newer one, but what you've been doing for a longer time is you're teaching publishing workshops. You're an instructor. You're teaching people how to be authors, how to essentially lead a small business, which is what happens when you publish a book independently. So as someone who has gone through this process as an author twice now, and you're working on the third book, and you're now teaching and evaluating the manuscripts, tell our authors how does the fundraising system work that we do, and why we fundraise, and what skills they are going to learn with you along the process, and most importantly, why manuscripts has such a low acceptance rate.
All good questions. So I'll kind of do this in parts. As far as fundraising system goes, we really do this to make sure that the authors individually are spending the least amount of their own money as necessary. And when we fundraise on various different platforms for various different imprints. So different imprints are different. But essentially, when you fundraise, you are funding your book through pre-orders from people that reach out to you and pre-order your book at a little bit of a higher rate than people think, but they get awesome perks that are involved as like launch events, and they get to be in your acknowledgments. And basically the money that you fundraise goes towards the funding of these things that you would have to pay out of pocket otherwise. So the fundraising goes towards the various editors that you work with when you publish, the cover design of your book, the layout design, the copy editing, launch and promotion. It funds basically the publication of your book to where you don't have to pay as much as you might normally have to, which is a lovely gift when you get to the end and realize that, oh, you've actually done that and you can just like rest and publish your book.
Absolutely.
So then the reason we have a low acceptance rate is we do want to publish quality. And we want to publish people that are excited about literature and are excited about this journey. And so our low acceptance rate is not necessarily because we're picky, but it's more that this is a community-based enterprise, and we are wanting to welcome as many people as we can with quality books available. And so we're just particular, but we're proud of that, and it's okay. And we are also particular for the reason, like Mackenzie noted earlier, that you do maintain your copyright, and there are things that are beneficial to publishing with a small press, but that might come with a low acceptance rate as well. So it's that double-edged sword.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of, pull back a curtain a little bit on what authors will learn, what do you teach? What are the publishing workshops? Because that might be kind of a new concept for some people. Not every hybrid publisher does this.
Yeah, for sure. So in publishing workshops, we go through a number of different things. We start off strong with helping you through the pre-sale phase, because the pre-sale phase can be a daunting task for new authors. Yeah. And it can be quite intimidating as you are reaching out to people to help with the funding of your book, to get your book funded. That can be something that is intimidating, but that is something that we work really hard for 6 weeks to help authors through, like the rev up to that pre-sale campaign, and then all the weeks that it lasts, to make sure that they have all the tools to be successful, various methods of reaching out to people, reaching local press, all of that kind of thing. And then once we get through that process, authors move into their revisions phase, which we start talking about how to work with revisions editors, and we start talking to them about those VPA calls, about book trailers, which normally happens before pre-sale, but we talk to them about, those cover reveals that will come later. We talk to them about meeting with their cover designer and what that process looks like. We talk about copy editing, which is a whole other phase. We kind of walk them through the publishing process, which is one of the best parts of my job. So,
did you find it personally helpful when you were writing your books?
Absolutely. For my first book, I was quite the scared little duckling. I wanted lots of guidance. I wanted lots of help to help me fly. So it
and
was
now you're the expert. Now you're teaching,
which is crazy. But yeah, I wanted lots of help. I wanted a hand to hold and someone to like jumpstart me and into my own action as well. So it's nice to have that hand to hold and know that there's people behind you that have the answers for you when you're stressed and you don't know the answer. And it's nice to kind of have access to a roadmap of where you're going, like what the next step is after pre-sale and what the next step is after revisions and cover design and layout. It's nice to know where you're going. So there's someone with you along that process. So I found it particularly helpful when publishing.
Absolutely. And we will hold your hand for sure. Now, here's an interesting question from Matthaus. I hope I'm not butchering your name. I apologize if I do. So I guess this one is for Riley. I will have to leave shortly, so here's my question before I have to go. In regards to submission, is a first draft an acceptable submission, or should it be a later rendition of the story?
Absolutely. Submit your first drafts. First drafts are never perfect. First drafts are hardly ever pretty. Um, if you've written a pretty first draft, I'd love to shake your hand. But yeah, absolutely submit your first draft. We have a lovely team of editors that will help you get that first draft to where you feel confident publishing it. So yeah, absolutely. You're welcomed and encouraged to submit your first draft.
Lovely. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that statement. Now, Kyra has joined us, our friend here and our head of community, and she's saying going through the writing revisions process with the broader community makes everything less intimidating and more fun. Absolutely. Here's the thing. The motto of manuscripts is never write alone, which I can imagine can be a controversial thing to say when essentially writing is known for being a lonely job. I think we can all agree with that. So this notion of, hey, you don't have to write alone. You can have support. Here it is. So I was thinking, what are your thoughts on that? Whoever want to jump in.
I got words. So I have thoughts on this one particularly because for me, I thrive off of an accountability partner. I am a person who is most productive when I'm body doubling, meaning if there's another person in the room, I'm going to get stuff done. If there is another person watching me, stuff is going to happen. You know what I mean? So if I'm, meetings with my editor are the most productive. We have these amazing brainstorming sessions that leave me feeling so inspired to go and then actually outline chapters, actually write them and get them done. Otherwise, I really struggle to hold myself accountable to getting words actually put down on the page and to just sit there by myself and not get distracted by other things and creating habits. One of the habits I've been trying to create is putting on my noise canceling headphones and really trying to not get distracted. But yeah, the working with others or joining and being a part of writing groups for me has completely changed my writing game.
I would agree with you. For me personally, I think the word life-changing is not an overstatement. Feedback of an editor could be really life-changing, not just because it would make you feel emotionally better about yourself, but because they that additional pair of eyes who really cares, and you can tell when an editor cares, can help you move the story in a direction that you wouldn't think possible. That was my experience, at least. It was amazing. And when I wrote something that didn't make any sense at that time, I didn't even realize that it didn't make any sense. My editor pointed out to me, was like, plot hole. I was like, oh my God, really? So yeah, Emily, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I went through this process 2 times. So I'm a little bit of a veteran in that sense. And so I am sort of like Mackenzie, where I can hold myself accountable, but I do a lot better when I have sort of the community element. Yeah. I have other people sort of in my circle and not just necessarily cheering me on. You definitely have that in the editors and everything like that. But just having other writers sort of going through the same trenches that you're going through, where you have those moments where you're like, I got writer's block. Can we just hop on a call and can I just word vomit to you and let's figure out how I can get past this? Different things like that. Having people sort of go through the journey with you, where you're cheering them on, they're cheering you on. And you sort of have this shared experience, I think is one of the really powerful things about this process, where you get sort of that combination of what you would have if you just did it by yourself, indie publishing completely, or if you just did it traditionally published and sort of had everyone else take the reins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my personal experience and from personal experiences of some of my author friends, it can be very daunting to open yourself up to a stranger. In that sense, because you are opening up your mind. And so this is a forum, guys, so please feel free to jump in. When someone is introverted, as writers usually are, not exclusively, but let's be honest, we do like our space, private space, and our quiet and peace. So when you have an editor suddenly, which happens every time with us, especially in this process that Manuscript has created, they will care. They will keep you and hold you accountable. And when someone doesn't feel comfortable, what would your advice to them be?
I like to speak to this one because I was definitely one of those people that was very nervous about welcoming editors, and I was very protective and secretive about my work because it felt so personal. So that was something that I had never really shared, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to talk about this to a stranger?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I will say that, you know, while it is daunting initially, I kind of just like forced myself to like go like all in, just jump in, talk about the fullness of my book and what I wanted it to be and the trajectory of, you know, my characters and my plot. And once that was like out and we all knew what was happening, it was a lot less daunting to go into meetings and kind of pick it apart and pull it apart and find those plot holes and find the things that were wrong. And I mean, inevitably, I had wonderful relationships with every single one of my editors. And my revisions editor, actually, I begged her to publish my second book because I was like, you need to do this with me or I don't want to do it.
Hold my hand.
Yeah, no, literally. And it was one of those things that I was like, okay, now you're my trusted person. Now you have to be here. And that's lovely to create that relationship with editors.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing pains, I would say. It can be painful, but at the end of the day, you will end up taller and better for it. Okay. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Any final question, comments, or concerns? No? Are we good to go here? All right. So a final parting message. We are actually not done with the live streams for this year, guys. There is still a whole 2 months before us, before the sponsorship with NaNoWriMo ends, and we will be helping you throughout the month of December prepare your book for submission. So please join us next week. I will be interviewing Venus Bradley. She's one of our acquisition editors, and she's gonna really pull back the curtain on what it is like to work with her, work with editors, work within this process, and oh, we have a lovely comment. Okay, let's show it. Mage says, my daughter is an author and journalist. I've retired after 35 years developing software, and I intend to write a fantasy series to prove to her I'm not just a tech head. Thanks for a great stream. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
it warms my heart, Mage. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do so next week as well. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on social media. And you guys, everyone out there, all the relevant forms are in the chat. Again, just to reiterate, we have extended the submission deadline to January 31st, so you would have those additional 2 months to finish up your lovely manuscripts. And I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.